The MGH Division of Palliative Care and Geriatric Medicine launched the Dementia Care Collaborative and the Dementia Care Collaborative Support Program in 2017. And the mission of this program is nothing less than to transform memory care. In addition to the research conducted in the division to improve dementia care, the Caregiver Support Program exists specifically to educate and support patients, caregivers, clinicians, and really the larger community. There are a variety of programs to choose from, including individual and family meetings for patients who receive their care in specific MGH clinics. There's this Health and Resiliency program that is offered once a month. There's our other educational speaker series, Conversations with Caregivers, that is also offered once a month. And then we have ongoing programs that focus on health and resiliency, practical skills for dementia caregivers, and 3 ongoing support groups. So we offer a lot. And this program is 100% funded through philanthropy. So if you've enjoyed these programs, please, if you're interested in reaching out to give a gift, you can contact Judy or Susan. And you can always look at our website, dementiacarecollaborative.org, for information on how to give to support the program. Now I'd like to introduce our wonderful speaker for the evening. I'm so glad that she said yes when we invited her, Dr. Helen Delichatsios. She is a clinician educator at Mass General Hospital, a graduate of Cornell University Medical College. Helen completed her internal medicine residency at Cornell New York Hospital and earned a Master's of Science degree in epidemiology at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. And Helen has an active primary care practice. She teaches students and residents, and her research interests and publications concern effective nutrition and obesity counseling methods in the primary care office. Pre-pandemic, back then, Helen offered shared medical appointments in the office for patients with metabolic disorders, with an emphasis on self-management and teaching through cooking. With COVID-19, she promptly transitioned to a Zoom platform where she runs virtual group visits that include culinary medicine instruction. So I turn it over to Helen. Helen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you and welcome everyone. And I assume everyone can hear me. Maria, give me a thumbs up if that's the case. Excellent, good. I'm gonna share some slides, just make a few general comments, but then I'm gonna go off share screen and share some recipes, which I think are more fun. I've experimented with a lot of teaching cooking over Zoom over the last 20 months and different camera and video angles. And what I'm gonna share with you tonight seems to work best. I've tried cook-alongs in the past, but find it's hard to instruct people to chop things over Zoom because I'm not there to supervise and prevent fingers being chopped off. So you can try what I'm doing later if you feel comfortable, but for now we're just going to do some demos. So I am going to share my screen and talk about keeping ourselves healthy, not only during the holidays, but all times. I'm part of this program at Mass General Hospital called the Healthy Lifestyle Program, and myself, along with other physicians and nurses and health coaches, are interested in how we can use our lifestyle to improve our health. And that includes not only nutrition, but physical activity, stress management, healthy relationships, adequate sleep, and avoidance of risky substances. And as you might imagine, among these things, given my talk tonight, my interest is in the nutrition and in the culinary medicine part of healthy lifestyles. So you may ask, what is culinary medicine? If you've not heard this term, this definition is, it's an evidence-based field in medicine that blends the art of food and cooking with the science of medicine. So it's not only nutrition, it's not only cooking, it's a blend, and you'll see what I mean as I do my demos. And the reason this is important is that poor nutrition and overweight status can be associated with a myriad of diseases, not only the diabetes and cholesterol and the heart disease that we might think of more obviously, but it increases the risk of certain cancers. It can increase the risk of stroke. It can cause joint problems, reflux, arthritis, pulmonary disease, mental health conditions. So it is important that we nourish ourselves to prevent or manage all of these conditions. And I'm not going to go into specific diets or specific foods to eat or not to eat, apart from some obvious things. I'm going to stick with some mainstream ideas that many people agree on in terms of eating real foods, mostly plants and fruits and vegetables, and nuts and seeds, and avoiding processed foods and added sugars and trans fats. So there's a lot of debate in the nutrition literature, and I'm not going to venture into that territory. I'm only going to focus on things that, for the most part, everybody agrees on. And I want to throw out here, and you guys can put in the chat if you like, the concept of recipe. So I'm Greek, that's my heritage. And in the Greek language, the word for recipe is sidagi, and the word for a prescription that you get from your doctor, like Lipitor, is also sidagi. So that's not a coincidence, because for many times the recipe is the prescription. So if anyone thinks of their own language, if you have a language apart from English, you can think about how you say that word. And there are certain other languages where it's the same word. So that's a little food for thought as we talk about food demos. So my heritage, as I mentioned, is Greek, and I like to talk about the Mediterranean diet, and the foods that I will demo are along those lines. However, there's a lot of cultures with a lot of healthy practices. I think as we've moved into the more modern era of processed foods, we've lost some of those practices. So it'll be good to go back to some basics, really. So in terms of where and when to practice culinary medicine, I try to talk with my patients when I'm seeing them in the office, whether it's for physical or follow-up visits or chronic conditions or acute visits. But as you all probably are aware, it's hard to do a lot in a one-on-one visit with your clinician or your patient. And that's why I've started doing group visits where we talk about not only the medical stuff, but how food and food demos can bring some points across. And I encourage you, in addition to the health setting, you can really take this concept of trying to cook together in a healthy manner. This is when I was teaching medical students back when I traveled to other countries, how to cook in a healthy fashion. And it's something that can be really translatable to any setting. Fast forward to COVID times, you'll see our empty conference room, and we transitioned to Zoom. And I don't have, those are my medical students, I don't have any Zoom photos of my patients for HIPAA reasons. However, you might imagine what we're doing tonight, I can do with a group of my own patients. And then since it's a smaller group, there's a lot of Q&A as we're talking. And like Nori said, feel free to put questions in the chat, both as we go along and definitely at the end after I'll pause after every recipe and ask the audience for questions. So if you have any questions, I'll have at least 4 breaks. So right now, I'm going to go off share screen so that I can show a little show and tell. So this is going to be recipe number 1. And I know it's really hard. And yes, the recipes, I'll show you where to get them, but do grab a pen and paper because not everything is in the resource that I'm going to tell you if you want to jot some notes down. All right, this is a hard quiz because it's not easy to see what these are, but I'm going to zoom in as close as I can. And if anyone can guess what these are, they're a type of seed, put it in the chat, and then Nori can look at the chat. I'll give you 10 seconds to guess if anyone wants to put that in there. Yay, the first person got it right. Okay, those are chia seeds, which come in a big bulk, and they're not particularly expensive if you buy them in bulk. And then I transfer them to my little glass containers because they're easier to measure with my measuring spoon. And I'm going to demonstrate, my first recipe will be chia pudding, which is a great breakfast. And you might put in the chat if you've done it before, if you have any suggestions, if you like it, if you don't like it. but just a few words about chia seeds. They've been around. They were a major crop in Mexico, Guatemala, and they were cultivated as early as 3000 BC. So these are definitely an old foods, and the Aztec gods got this food. And the reason is, or as a note, that they're very high in fiber, protein, lots of minerals, good fats, the polyunsaturated fats, and they are a complete protein. They contain all 9 essential amino acids. That's pretty good for a food. And it's easy to add to a salad or a smoothie or the pudding that I'm going to demonstrate right now. And just one caution, just because something is good doesn't mean a lot of it is better. And there's been some reports apparently that if people ate too many of these chia seeds dry and didn't eat them like in a normal fashion, they expand and they had problems with their esophagus. So don't eat too many of these seeds dry. So I'm going to now, bear with me as I transition to my demo table over there and show you recipe number 1. All right. Wait. While I'm transitioning, what's in the chat, Nori? Anything?
Just the question of, will the recipes be available? You said yes. And then Sarah, who knew, these are chia seeds. So feel free, if any of you have had chia, you like it, you don't like it, you've had, if you've used it, how have you used it? If there's anything you want to share about chia, feel free to put it in the chat.
We have lots of fun stuff coming up. Hold on, I'm going to change my angle just a little bit. In prior presentations, I have had my assistant, who's my daughter, who helps me with the camera and things. She's working tonight. Okay, this is one of the recipes that is not available in print unless you Google it, which is what I did. So I'm just going to dictate it to you. And when I demonstrate recipes, I'm not a chef. I'm not a trained chef, and I'm not making fancy, difficult recipes. My goal is to provide some simple tips that we can incorporate into our daily lives. And speaking of tips, this is my tip number 1. You can read that: plan, prep, ahead. So with a little bit of planning, you can have a healthy lifestyle without too much, not too hard. I think so this is the plan for tomorrow morning. So the reason I chose some of these recipes is it's what I'm going to have both for dinner tonight and for breakfast tomorrow. So I washed my hands before my talk and my computer screen just to have a clean space. And what I'm going to use for this recipe is really 3 or 4 things. So the chia seeds, which we already mentioned, almond milk, any milk. I'm using almond, but you can use cow milk. Sweetener, which I'm opting not to use sweetener, but you can use honey or sugar to taste. And then finally, fruit. And I am going to choose today banana and blueberries. And okay, here's another quiz. Who can tell me what that is? You can put that in the chat. It's a half of one. There's the other half. There's the other cut half. It's quite a quiz. Oh, I'm going to do another quiz at the end. It's always fun to do quizzes. And watch how easy this is. So the recipe here is 1 cup milk to 4 tablespoons chia seeds. So I'm going to get my chia seeds. This is why I do it. That's right, pomegranate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the reason I do most of this ahead of time is it's hard for me to talk and prep things at the same time. So I've got my little whisk here. So 2 ingredients so far: almond milk, chia seeds, and then I'm opting out of the sweetener, so I don't even have that. And then I'm going to add in my fruit. And for me, if I took a banana and I chopped it up into small pieces, if I put banana in a food, usually a breakfast food or some sort of baking, that is a sweetener. So banana is very sweet. Most fruit are sweet. So it's a great way to add sweetness without adding added sugars, but rather fruit as sugars. So now I'm mixing. And because I had some of these around, I'm putting in some blueberries and pomegranate. Oh, that was a pomegranate. And peeling a pomegranate is very messy, but I love pomegranates. They're both beautiful on the outside and beautiful when you cut them in half. I don't know if you can appreciate that geometry. And then when you peel the seeds, they're nice little pearls. Now, you might say that all of this takes time. If you plan ahead appropriately, maybe you're on a Zoom call that you don't need to be fully attentive to. Like this one, you could be doing food prep while you're listening. So that's how I tried to plan ahead and do my food prep. So I have my milk source, my chia, my fruit, and that's pretty much it. So I've got my cute little containers, which it's always fun to do things that is not only fun, but pretty. So the reason I chose these containers is I had these left over from yogurts that didn't have caps and I never knew what to do with them. And then I realized I could put chia pudding in them because you'll see after it settles, it changes in consistency so that it's solid-ish. All right. Let me know, Nori or Judy or Susan, if there's any comments about chia in the chat, or you can open it up if anyone has any voice questions. You can speak them out loud.
There's no chia commentary. Two people knew that they were pomegranate seeds. I have a question because I have not recently, but cooked with pomegranate, and it is kind of a beautiful mess. Do you have any tips on how to excavate the seeds from the pomegranate?
Okay, I'm not going to do it now because it's too messy, but if you put it in a big bowl with water in it, you can do it under the water and it avoids some splatter. So that's the only tip that I've really had that works. Otherwise, you just get your hands clean, you clean them, you get your hands messy, and then you're done after a few minutes. So it's not too bad. I forgot. This is why I have all the stuff on my thing to remind me. These are cacao nibs. Cacao is what we make chocolate from. It's the cacao bean, but just the actual bean and not added sugar. And this is what they look like. They're like little particles. And if you taste them, they almost taste like chocolate, but they're super bitter, but they offer a great crunch. And sometimes I add these to my chia pudding as well. So what I want to share with you is, apart from the basic advice to add those 3 ingredients that I mentioned, anything else can be like if you have leftover fruit. Sometimes I have too much mint. I'm like, what am I going to do with my mint? I throw that in there. So I'm going to mix it up again so that my cacao nibs are well mixed. And this is basically my breakfast for tomorrow. These are small serving sizes, so depending on how hungry you are, you can either make a bigger one. My daughter says her and her boyfriend, they make a huge vat of it and work on it all week. I personally like the single serve options. So now, you'll excuse me for 10 seconds, I'm gonna put these in the fridge. And if you wait a few hours, this is what they look like. And they're ready to eat after a few hours or overnight, and they last for a few days. And if you turn it upside down, it doesn't fall out. So that's my little show and tell. The good thing with Zoom, as opposed to when I used to do in-person ones, is it's a lot easier to do time-lapse photography. So 3 hours later, this is what they look like. And then if you want, you can add some more fruit on top. And again, you can use nuts. And I am not going to eat while I'm talking so I don't choke, and no one's here to give me the Heimlich, but it tastes, and I already did a taste test earlier. So that's part one.
Helen, we have one question.
Yep.
I wish we had smell-o-vision on Zoom, but I can imagine it. One person asked, where can they buy chia seeds in bulk?
I know some supermarkets stock it, so you could start there. Bulk, I'm sure online you can find bulk chia, but I usually, this usually lasts me for a couple months, depending how many food demos I do. I actually just discovered this a couple months ago when I was in the hospital at MGH. In the Coffee Central, they sell chia pudding. And I said, wow, this is better than I expected. And I just looked at the ingredients and said, I think I can do this at home. I think someone else answered your question in the chat.
Costco. Somebody said Costco. So
yeah,
Costco's got it. All the other places have it.
And I love these sessions because I learn from you as well. Like I said, I don't know everything. It's just fun to share certain tips. And part of my next tip, which I didn't spell out earlier, but I'm going to spell out now, is mise en place. And you can write in the chat if you know what mise en place is. And while someone is writing it, I'm going to demonstrate it. Anyone know? What are they saying, Nori?
I have no commentary. I asked the question, who watches the Food Network and sees all those little miniature ramekins, but nobody has replied.
Here's my attempt to be the Food Network. I'm not the Food Network. Anyway, so my next demo will be, I'm going to come close up. Who knows what these are?
Anybody, feel free to put it in the chat.
So those are brown lentils, yep. And it's hard to see on Zoom, very small, but if you ever look at a lentil close up, you'll realize, or I'll tell you why, the reason it's called lentils is that it's the shape of a lens. Same thing in Greek. In Greek, it's called phakes because phako means lens. So little tidbit, that's how lentils got their name. Lentils are a lot of fun and easy to cook because they cook very fast. Tonight, I decided to do brown or green lentils, they're called, and this takes about 15 minutes. You boil them, you drain them, and they're ready to eat. And what I'm going to demonstrate here is a couple concepts. We already did I didn't answer what mise en place means. So mise en place is French for having everything in its place. Before you do a recipe and while you're cooking, making sure you read your directions, that you have everything. And then when you're cooking, when you're about to do a food demo like I am, making sure you've got everything in its place so I'm not going back and forth to catch things.
I will say somebody told us, Joanne put in the chat that she knew it, put in place.
Excellent. It's French, but the chefs use it all the time. And actually, people now have started to use the term not only for cooking, but for their lives, to mise en place their lives, to put everything in its place. So you might hear that around. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is the recipe. And this recipe also is not directly online. So if you are interested and you can do variations of this, I'm doing brown lentils. I also sometimes use black lentils, which hold their shape a little bit better. So I'm going to put 1 cup dried brown lentils turns into multiple cups of cooked brown lentils. And this ingredient has some sort of onion. I used scallions. So I've already chopped them up. Scallions go in there. Some sort of fruit. I'm using a green apple. So I chopped up a green apple. Again, I don't want to chop while I'm talking so I don't cut myself. Walnuts or another nut. And then we mix it up. So I'm looking at my creation here. Usually when I do demos, I like to have it a little bit more colorful. And since I've got some extra pomegranates and I think they'll go well in this, I'm gonna add a little red because it's always fun to, red is my favorite color. So, so there. And then you can add a little bit of oil, vinegar, salt, and pepper to taste. So I am gonna add some olive oil. And I don't have my vinegar on hand, so I'm not gonna go off screen and get it, but you can be more prepared and have a vinaigrette already. If you add a little salt, you're generally gonna add a lot less than any prepared food. So it's good to add salt right at the end before you serve because you're gonna taste it more. I generally don't cook with a lot of salt, and then when I go to restaurants, I think everything is salty. Oh, and also I like, this is feta cheese. So I prefer to get my sodium from a little bit of cheese rather than from salt. And then another fun part of cooking is also a verb called plating. I didn't realize plate was a verb until I went to a conference that talked about plating. So I am not an artist, but I'm going to try to inspire people when you are preparing your food, whether it's for yourself or whoever you live with or for company, to make it pretty. So like I said, brown isn't as colorful as some other colors. So I'm going to add a little bit of red at the end to make it nice and colorful. And then when you present it, they've shown that when people are presented foods in different containers, like if I were to present this to you in a, I don't know, cardboard box, it might not look as appealing as displayed nicely on a nice plate or as a side dish. So I encourage you to have fun with your food and to your inner child. And cooking is also a great family event. Let's see.
We have a question.
Uh-huh.
One of our participants said that they are allergic to lentils. So is there something that you would recommend subbing in?
Ooh, all lentils? I'm not familiar with lentil allergies. However, if you're allergic to lentils, then I would think all the subtypes of lentils, because there are green, they're brown, red. I'm not sure, like, if you're allergic to lentils, if you can do some other legume, or you might have to stick with a different grain salad.
Let's see. Somebody says, can you use rice?
Yeah. So you can do grain. So all of these tips today, I didn't pick a grain dish. However, I also like to cook with brown rice and quinoa and wheat berries and bulgur. So those are other mediums to have as part of your meal. I'm not cooking with meat tonight because A, it's messier, and B, to share all the good things that we can make without meat as well. Okay, I'm gonna pause and do 2 more tips. So another important tip when you're doing food prep is to do batch cooking, which means, when I made the lentils today, I made some extra so that way I could have it for a different dish, or better yet, put in the freezer. And I really encourage you to freeze things. And I'm going to give you a tour of my freezer, which I cleaned, to show you the types of things that you can freeze and how to use your freezer. So I'm going to do one more switcheroo here and give you a tour of, let's see, I think you can see that. So again, this is a somewhat cleaned fridge. So things you can freeze. Grains are good to freeze. These are wheat berries and, in my case, quinoa, in different containers, of course. The important thing with freezer is make sure you label them, because sometimes when it's frozen, it's hard to tell, especially with sauces, what's what. These, for example, are tomatoes. Tomatoes freeze well. And this is chili. So a prepared dish chills well. So you can either have prepared or raw ingredients. This is a yellow split pea soup. And the other things that freeze well are frozen fruit, bananas I often have in the freezer for smoothies. And then Thanksgiving, I'm still working through a ton of pumpkin pie that I just froze in individual servings that I'll pull out later. And if you have x-ray vision, you can see all the other things in my freezer that I did not say what they were, but if you didn't see that, that's okay. All right. Anything else before we move on? Do you see anything there, Nori?
I don't see anything else in the chat right now, but feel free, anybody, if you have any questions about what Helen has prepared, what else might live in her freezer. I like that there are individual slices of pumpkin pie. I'd like to come get one of those. So any questions, and it doesn't necessarily need to be about exactly what Helen has just prepared.
Okay, while people are writing that, if you have any questions, let's fix my lighting here. Hold on. Let's reposition. All right, next I have, oops, it's too low, an artichoke. So artichokes are in season different times during the year, and I saw them yesterday and they looked good, so I figured I'd get one. And I'm gonna have this for dinner, but I'm also gonna explain how I prepare it. I first had this in Napa Valley, California a bunch of years ago, and it was so deliciously, it seemed not too hard to do. So basically, I take an artichoke, and this is where I'm gonna cut carefully. Okay, if you don't have a good knife or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, get someone else to do that because I don't want anyone hurting themselves. But the nice thing about the artichoke, this is a fresh artichoke, if you open it and you put in, okay, here's another 4-ingredient recipe. So artichoke, garlic, olive oil, lemon. Okay, I lied, 5 ingredients. Salt, if you want to add a little salt. So you peel the artichoke, you peel some garlic cloves, like about 20 of them. I used them in the other artichoke, as you'll see. And then you take the pieces of garlic and you stuff it into the artichoke and you line it in there. You squeeze a little lemon on it, a little olive oil, a little bit of salt, and then you're going to see what it looks like after cooking in 400 degrees for about an hour. So part 2, while I'm roasting an artichoke, I'm like, ooh, I love garlic. Let me take an extra garlic, cut it in half, and then a beautiful garlic cut in half. I don't know if you've ever been at a restaurant where they served you roasted garlic cut in half. Throw that into the oven as well. And we're going to move to the oven now. Okay, back to position 1. You'll see the layout of my kitchen, which prompts me to keep it clean. And lo and behold, here is the artichoke an hour later. And this is what the garlic looks like. Do you have to peel the garlic? No, watch, I'm going to show you how to eat it. And while I had the oven going, I threw in some butternut squash and I roasted some peppers. So when you have your oven going roasting things, it's easy to just throw in whatever's in your fridge. So Judy, if you see my roasted garlic, I have my little itty bitty tasting spoon. You can just pluck them out like that. And during pre-COVID times, people would share this, but during COVID, I might make individual ones of these for everybody because a lot of the people that I eat with like and can eat a whole half garlic. So, okay, You can't smell on Zoom, but if I describe it well enough, you can just imagine how great a piece of roasted garlic tastes. So that's the garlic. And then let's open up and see. I haven't opened this up yet, so we'll see what it looks like. My artichoke. I'm just curious, and put this in the chat so Nori can tell me if anyone has had artichoke before, if you eat it like this, or if you eat it another way. This is also very popular in Greece. Okay, it's looking good. Woo-hoo. So you see how many garlics I put? I put like 20 pieces of garlic. And so this is my roasted garlic. And then the one that's in the artichoke is softer, but also tastes very good. So the way to eat an artichoke, if you've never had one this way, it takes a little practice, and you basically start on the outside and you peel the artichoke thing. And then this part is the edible part, and you use your teeth and you pick it off. So again, I can't do that right now, but it tastes amazing. And if you haven't tried it, you can try it, or better yet, if someone else can show you how to do it, because it is a little bit of an acquired taste. I don't know that trying it straight up would be, I'd love to introduce people to it rather than telling them to go home and try it.
We've got some comments of people who love artichokes and haven't had them in a long time. And Helen, this was really interesting. Growing up, my mom used to make it, but she didn't roast it. She would, steam it.
Mhm.
This adds so much more richness. And then, of course, we would have drawn butter and dip the leaf in the butter. And then, so maybe less nutritious that way, but just maybe a dot of butter. Let's see. Somebody else says they steam them.
Yep.
With bay leaves.
Yep. So steaming is
and garlic and lemon.
Mhm.
That sounds great. Oh, yes. I like that idea of steaming them with the bay leaves.
So part of the fun part about cooking and eating well, again, the recipes I'm demonstrating aren't that complicated or intense. It's more just on a day-to-day basis how to have a little fun with the cooking too, as opposed to ordering takeout, which, hey, that's fun too. I do that too, but just not too much. Otherwise, too much sodium and things that you don't know what's in there. That's the other thing. Making it yourself, you have a better idea of what's going into the food. Okay, I'm going to transition to my last recipe. And this is the concept, I think Nori and Judy know. It's called the dessert flip, which when I have my daughter, she does the lovely chocolate dipped strawberries, but I don't want to do that without her because I'm not as agile at that. However, I'm going to go back to practical things. So I have in the fridge from a weekend a leftover piece of, this happens to be olive oil cake. I didn't make it, but it's one of the things I want to try to make at some point. So it's a pound cake alternative, but it's a pretty generous slice. I probably wouldn't eat this whole thing, but somebody might be served either part of it or a good part of it at a restaurant. And after a meal, sometimes you want a little something sweet, but you don't really need a whole piece of cake. So instead of, here we go. Here's my token dessert with a berry on top, which oftentimes you'll see. I won't call out the Cheesecake Factory, but let's say a piece of cheesecake with a berry on top. Let's flip it. So we are going to take this and take a smaller portion, and you'll see it's actually pretty small. However, at the end of the meal, especially if you've eaten a generous meal, if you're with friends, you don't really need a big piece of cake. You just want that taste. And instead of whipped cream, why not use a little Greek yogurt or a thick yogurt, and that'll give you sort of the creamy taste. So let's put with a touch of yogurt. My lighting is a little off. So a little dessert there. And then I saved some of my fun red pomegranate seeds. And let's load it up with berries. So you'll see how, okay, I didn't practice this, so my artistic result isn't as impressive as it would be in a chef's kitchen. But the point is that you can turn a big piece of cake into a small portion with a lot of berries and have that be your dessert. So that's the dessert flip part. And the final tip, which I don't want to forget, so I'm going to mention it now, but it goes for all of these meals, is to savor our food. So oftentimes I myself am eating during lunch or having a meal on the go, but ideally it would be nice to just take a few moments to just appreciate where our food came from, to thank all the people who brought it to where it got to be, to get on our plates, appreciate ourselves that put something healthy to nourish ourselves and our families. And then as we're tasting it, to smell it, to look at it, as we're chewing it, to listen to the crunch, taste the flavor, and not do it so mechanically as we sometimes do. And like I said, I'm not going to eat while I'm talking. So I'm gonna pause there and see if anyone has any thoughts or questions about either the dessert flip or anything we've talked about today.
Yeah, so anybody, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. And we are, we're a smaller group. So if you're like, I type all day, I don't want to type, I invite you to come off of mute. That's totally welcome. And also feel free to share, definitely we have Helen here to ask questions, but if maybe you have a recipe that you think others might enjoy, or a dessert that you flipped, although maybe you didn't call it flipping a dessert, anything, it's an open forum for inquiry and reflection. And everyone might just also be hungry and want to like go eat dinner or go make dinner.
And that's fine too. I'm gonna eat all these things after we get off. I basically prepped my dinner and my breakfast.
You never know if we're going to have a quiet group or people who have a lot of questions, but anything is welcome.
Do people know what they're having for dinner tonight or breakfast tomorrow?
Let's see.
Oh, I have one more thing.
Okay, so Jan says, what will you have for dinner with the artichoke? And another person says, there are some great recipes for lentils, including one I have found, which is lentil stew made with lentils, vegetable broth, potatoes, carrots, etc. So thank you, Kathy, for sharing. And what are you going to have? Jan wants to know what you're going to have with your artichoke.
The lentils.
All right. Judy says, how much protein do you really need?
I forgot the exact number. It's I think a little less than 1 gram per kilogram per day. I think many people are concerned that we don't get enough protein if we don't eat meat products. However, there's a lot of protein in what I both demonstrated and in other, and even in pasta and other grains, there's protein. So there is this obsession about protein, but I think we generally get enough. I just wanted to share with you, if you have the spelling of my name, I do have a little website called delichatsiosmd.com, which has, I don't know if it has any of the recipes that specifically that we did tonight, but it has a lot of the tips incorporated into some of the other recipes that I sometimes demonstrate. And like I said, I think it's important that we find something that works that you can incorporate daily. And hopefully you were able to pick up something that resonated that you think might be able to be incorporated into your routine for yourself and your family and friends.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Helen. I will say I loved that you just kept pulling other roasted items out of your oven. Um, I don't know, everybody here has a different lifestyle and different ways they move through their day, but a big saver for me in the fall and winter is I roast a lot of vegetables. I just roast a lot of vegetables and, put olive oil on them and salt and pepper and um, it's not necessarily a full meal, but then I usually have some quinoa. But yeah, roasting vegetables has been a big lifesaver to eat something warm and nourishing.
Mhm.
Let's see. All right. Well, I think if nobody else has any questions, there's no hard and fast rule that we have to go until 6:30. Maybe some folks are interested in itching to get into their kitchens and prepare some things and see what's in
Yep.
their pantry.
I'll stay on for another few minutes, but if anyone needs to go eat, thank you for your attention and nice to see everyone, sort of.
Yep. And I will just say, I forgot to split the screen earlier while we were chatting, but I want to let everybody know in your inbox today, you probably received an invitation to Conversations with Caregivers, which is December 14th with Joe Wallace. He is a photojournalist and an extraordinary storyteller. His presentation is called Portraits of Dementia. If you just Google Portraits of Dementia, he really connects with very large scale imagery to create empathy and connection of, who is this population? And it's quite extraordinary. And then our next health and resiliency program is the first Tuesday in January, which I believe is the 4th. And we're going to have a duo, a violin and piano duo, students who are currently at Juilliard. So we're going to we go from a cooking demonstration to an evening of music. The following month is going to be chair yoga. So that we've always got something cooking. That's so lame. I can't believe I can say that. So keep an eye out for those. And I also want to say this is my last event that I'm moderating with the Dementia Care Collaborative. My last day is on Friday. So I have seen many of you for the past almost 2 years on these programs, and it's a really wonderful and warm community that comes together to learn and to support one another, even if we're just in these little Zoom boxes. So I am grateful for everybody here because we really make up the collaborative together. So thank you. And thank you to my colleagues, Judy and Susan, who are on here.
I would love to say something that I want to, for all of us, thank Nori so much for her development of health and resiliency programs and her bright smile and all her professionalism, wisdom, and good humor that she has brought to everything she has done for the past 2.5 years. And we will miss you very much. So thank you, Nori. And thank you, Helen. This was so fun and so interesting.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much. And everybody, see what how you can play with these ideas that Helen shared and whip up something. And maybe on the next health and resiliency, you share what you might have created that's nourishing for you.
That's a great idea. And everyone's chatting in messages about how great the program was tonight, and also best of luck, Nori. You will be missed, and thank you, Helen. The food looks delish. I know I wish we were all together so we could all eat. Yes, thank you, Nori. Thank you so much. I don't know if I've enjoyed as thoroughly. The recipes sound delicious. Some recipes with lentils including, so just lots of thank yous and really appreciating both of you this evening. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, Helen. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Susan, my colleagues. Be well.